Man, it is a real pleasure to have my longtime friend, Rhett Lashlee, join us on the Coach Me Up podcast. I first got to know Rhett when he was in the 7th grade, Chris.
Okay.
I was the athletic director at Shiloh Christian High School. He was a 7th grade quarterback. The first play I remember about Rhett Lashlee was I think Rhett threw an interception is what happened.
And the dude, thanks for reminding me of
yeah,
that.
and the dude was running it back for a touchdown, Chris, the other way. Rhett runs him down from behind, doesn't tackle him, strips the ball from him, and turns around and runs it back for a touchdown for us. And you just knew right then that he kind of had that it factor that from day one I knew that this kid was really special. So, Rhett, that's a bittersweet memory for you, I'm sure, but we're so thankful to have you on, Coach. And in the busiest time, you just found out in 12 days you got a game against BYU. You're in the middle of recruiting. So we're going to just jump right into it. But, man, thank you for your time. And I want to start off with this, that you played TCU. Just a quick couple football questions. You played TCU
Yep.
during the college football playoff. What convinced me that they're worthy of being in the playoff? I'm not saying that they're not, but tell me why they're in.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously deserving because of their body work and their record. There's a lot, that's what's hard about what we do. There's a lot of teams that could argue who the best 4 teams are. But when you talk about deserving, with what they did, it's hard to go against it. Like, I think offensively they're really explosive.
Okay.
Obviously, Max Duggan's played at a career level for him. He's been there a long time, but really had his best year. But their running game, their running backs are really good. Kendra Miller is really good, but they got 2 other ones that are awesome. And then they got a lot of speed on the perimeter. They got Darius Davis, a big-time return guy. I mean, he's a guy they flip the jet sweeps to, and, I mean, he can go to the house on anybody at any time. And then they've got some size on the outside, 2 guys that can go up and high point the ball if you give them one-on-one. So and their offensive line's really good. So offensively, they're complete and they're balanced. They can really run the football. That's really where it starts. Kansas State beat them the other day because they stopped the run for the most part, with the exception of the quarterback hurting with his legs. But then on defense, Joe Gillespie's their defensive coordinator, came over there from Tulsa, so I've gone against him a lot in the past. And I got a ton of respect for him. He does it the right way. They have a unique structure. It's called a robber defense, really. Some are going to it, and they keep everything in front of them, really make you earn it, give you the idea that you got a good run box, but they got 11 eyes looking in the backfield at all times. So I think they're a complete team. I really do.
So obviously the college football playoff picture finally being finalized is big news this week. But the other big news this week in college football was the Rose Bowl finally towed the line and is going to allow for the playoff to expand sooner than maybe it was going to. So now in a couple of years, there'll be 12 teams. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the future of college football looks like as far as the 12-team playoff is concerned.
I think it should have happened a long time ago. I mean, I think you look at all major sports, but let's just take football. You got playoffs in high school, you got playoffs in every other level of college football, and you got playoffs in the NFL. Let it be decided on the field. And because there's just too many opinions that are all good, but like this year, there's 4 teams in there, but there's probably 8 teams who could win it. So why are all 8 teams not involved? And then you look at someone like us where we are, Tulane won our conference this year. They're going to the Cotton Bowl. They would be in the 12-team playoff. And so it gives someone like us a chance if we win our league, which we feel like we can. We're going to get an opportunity to play in the playoffs. And I love the fact they're doing on-campus games. I think that's what college sports is all about, the passion, the energy. That's what sets it apart, I think. And so I think it's great. I think it's great for our game. I think it's a good number because the regular season still matters a whole lot. But there's not a lot of arguments. Could number 13 win it and number 12, which is what the argument will become now. But 4 and 5 is a real argument.
Jimmy, let me hop in here with one more football question, if you don't mind. And I agree with you, Rhett. I think, one of the best things about college basketball is no coaches are worried about losing early. So they'll play whoever, whenever, wherever. Granted, there's a lot more neutral site games maybe than there used to be, but still you get some of these really neat, Tennessee and Arizona have played a home and home. Like, you get these, really cool where they get to come to our campus, we go to theirs kind of thing. And I think that first – 2 rounds of the playoffs, or certainly the first round, you're going to see some matchups you've never seen before on people's campuses that we just don't get to see in college football that I'm excited about. I want to ask you a little more of a nerdy football question. I'm a wannabe, so forgive me. But you got your start in coaching with Gus Malzahn, who, let's say 10 years ago, Gus Malzahn and Chip Kelly were kind of the outliers in college football, right? They were playing crazy fast. They were running all this spread stuff. You know, Browse came along. Like, there's been other people over the last decade that have kind of really disrupted the system. Where is college football right now offensively where it was 10 years ago when you started in the world of calling plays and designing offenses?
It's a great question, and you're right. I mean, Jimmy Dykes hired Gus when I was in 7th grade at my high school.
Yeah.
So this is coming full circle again.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Gus gave me an opportunity as a player and as a coach several times. And that's why I am where I am today, because of guys like Jimmy and Gus and others who really helped just give me opportunities. But you're right. Gus was a pioneer really in the high school ranks at the time, started no huddling. Nobody was doing that on a high level. And then when he got his opportunity to go into college, especially when he went to Tulsa and kind of did it his own way. I mean, he led the country in offense back-to-back years. That was in 2006-07. And so, to your point, the Chip Kellys, the Gus, the Art Briles, I don't want to say at the time, they just changed the way things were going. Well, at that time, nobody was doing it, so it was a huge advantage. Well, now everybody's doing some version of what we do, right? Whether it's tempo, spreading the field. I mean, you look at the NFL, the best teams, and look at the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Look at the Bills. What are they doing? You know, it was for 10 years ago, it was everybody in the NFL because, you know, you can't be in the shotgun. You got to be under center. Well, I mean, Tom Brady's made a living out of the shotgun and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And I think those guys allowed us to just think like football coaches and think out of the box and not like stay inside of a box of rules that we thought we were supposed to play by. And it changed everything and made it a very offensive game. Now everyone's doing it. Well, what happens? Defenses adapt. They learn. And defenses are getting better. So now you see teams like, you talk about the playoffs, look at Michigan. They're old school throwback.
Yeah.
And now if you're about to play them, that's actually unique. Like if you're TCU about to play them and you've played teams like us, but all those teams in the Big 12, and now nobody does that in the Big 12. And so it kind of flips the script a little bit, and more of the traditional offense is now unique. And so that's where Michigan has an advantage on people. But it's all cyclical. It all will cycle back, but defenses will catch up, and then offenses adapt, and then defenses adapt, and it's a fun back and forth.
Chris, you may know this about Rhett, but he mentioned he played for Gus Malzahn. Rhett is still number 6 in the nation, high school career, 13,204 passing yards. He's number 2 in the nation. He had a 672-yard passing game. I saw that offense like birthed on the field of Shiloh Christian.
I need to know what was the score.
It was 70-64. There was no defense.
Okay, so there were no empty yards in that game. You needed all 672.
And they ran for like 550, and we threw for almost 700.
That's awesome.
Hey, Rhett, let's dive in now because I know who you are. I've watched you since you were young, and I have tremendous respect for you. You've had great success, and you're young. I think there's a lot of young guys out there and gals, Rhett, that are trying to rise up, whether it's in the coaching profession or the business profession. They're a follower of Jesus. They're trying to do the right things, and the world keeps pulling them somewhere else. What do you say to those folks right now that are listening?
Oh, well, there's two thoughts. You know, one would be the coach speak answer that's not as spiritual, but it is a principle that I believe in. It's hard to do, and it's simple. It's be where your feet are and live in the moment you're in. You know, I'll never forget, Pat Sullivan hired me in 2011 to be the OC at Samford in Birmingham. I had just been with Gus at Auburn. We won the national title with Cam, and I get hired. My first full-time on-the-field job as an OC is 27. No business hiring me. I don't know why he did it, but he did. And, of course, right when I get there, I'm thinking in my head, you know, hey, I'm going to get here. They'd scored like 17 points a game on offense. Like, hey, we're going to be good on offense, and I'm going to get this job, and I'm going to get this. And I mean, and in a good way, like just having a goal and a vision.
Sure.
And I go through spring, realize real quick how hard this coaching thing's going to be. And so that summer, I remember I was up at the office, and I was just sitting there thinking, wow, like, how blessed am I? I'm sitting here. I just had my twin boys were just born at the time. They were like 4 or 5 months old, 6 months old. I remember sitting there thinking, how blessed am I? I'm 27. I've got 2 healthy kids. I'm living in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm coaching for Pat Sullivan, a Heisman Trophy winner who was an incredible person. And I'm getting to call plays in college football. Like, man, just enjoy where you are.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, God kind of spoke to me that day. And ever since then, I've done a pretty good job. I'm not perfect. No matter where I've been, just because if you don't do a good job where you are, nothing else is going to matter.
Yep.
You know, now take it to the reality, though, what I've learned over this time is, you know, kind of my life verse is Jeremiah 29:11. And it's, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. And when I was a sophomore in high school and that kind of became the verse I was going to live my life by, it had probably the feel to me that it does when anyone hears it. Oh, great. Yeah, God has a plan for me. It's going to be great. I'm going to be successful. Everything's going to work out. This is awesome. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But, you know, going through being at Stanford and then went with Gus for 1 year, then came back to Auburn. At 29, I was the OC at Auburn. In 2013, we go play for the national title. Like, I started interviewing for head jobs at 30 years old. And from about 2013 to 2019, I interviewed for a head job every year. And it wasn't until 2019 that I actually had the option to take one of them. Like, I wasn't getting them. And probably shouldn't have been. But to your point, when things happen fast and the world's telling you this about you or this about, or when things are going well, it's real easy to think you're doing it, do it in your own strength. Through that whole process, aside from just enjoying the moment of where we are, but there's still the human element to it. What I learned about that verse, I looked at it a different way, somewhere along those lines. And the verse says, for I know, I being God, I know the plans that I have for you. You know, I have plans to prosper you and harm you, not harm you, and give you hope in a future, but they're my plans for you. They're not your plans for you.
I love that.
And when that perspective shifted, it was like, oh, you know, you have a great plan for me, but I have to find a way to humble myself and trust in your plan, because your plan is the best plan for me. And the reality of it is, if I was in charge, I would have probably already done this, this, or this to either make things easier on myself, get where I want to get faster. And now I have the benefit of looking back at my journey to get to here going, I wouldn't have done this. I would have taken myself out of this hard situation. I would have gone here. I would have given myself this job if I was running the show, but it wasn't my plan. I have to submit to the fact that trust God's plan, and I want your plan to be my plan. And now I look back and see all the things I went through and know that they prepared me to be here. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I'd be, because I'd have been in charge and it wouldn't be good. So just shifting the prayer from a prayer of hope, which is great, to a prayer of, no, I just really want my plan to be your plan. And whatever that is, I know it's the best plan. And so, because God has to prepare us, his timing is perfect and his plan is best.
Yeah,
that's as good as I've ever had that verse broken down.
Yeah,
wow.
That's beautiful. It reminds me of the old line, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. You know, I've definitely tried to do that a few times in my career. As you've been around the country, been to some, I'm sure you've been on some staffs where there was spiritual strength. I'm sure you've been on some staffs where maybe that was not as comfortable as the culture or environment. I'm curious, in such a macho world, college football, how do you balance kind of the lion and the lamb of being a Christian, yet certainly being in a culture where people can play loose and fast with the rules, and also you're trying to call guys into a craft that demands a lot of them physically and mentally, and they're going to be challenged in a lot of different ways. How do you balance the two?
It's a great question. It's hard, you know, but it's hard to be in the world, not of the world. It's a hard profession. It's a great profession. I just think you just got to be genuine. You got to be who you are. You know, you're not going to be perfect. There's no way to be. But I think it's all about your heart. And if your heart's right, and if your heart is in a position of, you know, I want to do things. Look, I'm going to compete my tail off. I'm going to try to outcompete any staff. I'm going to compete for my players. I'm going to coach my players hard. You know, you can coach them as hard as you're willing to love them, and that's what we're going to live by. But at the end of the day, if your heart's in the right place, you don't sit around worrying about, well, am I messing up? Am I not? Like, you're going to mess up. That's what life is. That's the Christian life. Forgiveness is the story. But just have your heart in the right place. And I think if you are consistently genuine and with people, because I think life's about people, then when you do mess up, they're going to know where your heart is. They're going to know what your intentions were. And I think obviously being able to own it. But I don't know if I answered your question great. I think whether you're leading your staff, leading your young men, they just want to see real and genuine and consistent. And people nowadays can spot a fraud from a mile away. So I think if you're real and genuine, then they know where your heart is. You're going to be all right.
Hey, Ray, I love what you said there. I want you to expand on it just a little bit. You talked about the importance of, is your heart right? There's probably a lot of listeners right now that maybe haven't heard it put like that, or they don't really understand, how do I do that? How do you check yourself to make sure your heart is right? How do you get to that point?
Daily, and it's hard. I believe in an inside-out approach to like just about anything in life. I try to simplify things because I'm not the smartest. So like for example, if we're recruiting, we have an inside-out approach. And what I mean by that is everything starts here in Dallas for us and works itself out. Okay.
Yep.
Same thing with getting your heart right or in your spiritual life. We have to daily plug into our power source through prayer, through the word. For me, it's worship. Worship's kind of my spiritual love language.
Music?
Yes. Yeah. So if you come in my office, my Spotify is usually on, whether I'm watching film or whatever, playing a lot of worship music. I'm a little out of sync with what my guys listen to nowadays. But it's just something about keeping your heart in that mindset, especially to your point, with all the things that tug on any of us, but especially in what I do in this world. Because you can look up 2 or 3 days, 1 or 2 weeks, and go, whoa, my heart's not been right. How did I get here?
Yeah.
And it's a really scary feeling when you feel like you're disconnected from the Lord or you're not where you need to be. And it can happen like that. And so it's daily. And when you do notice it, reconnecting right away. And that's kind of what I meant by having your heart right. Because if you start, there's so many problems, so many things we have to deal with, both personally, professionally, and all in between. But if you start with that inside approach of, I'm going to have my heart right, I'm going to seek the Lord, I'm going to see what His Word tells, I'm going to be in prayer, I'm going to be in a spirit of worship, then all those other things just solve themselves. When your focus is there first. But when your focus is on all those things, we get distracted, and that's when I know for me, my heart can need to be checked.
So you said something to me that is fascinating, a little bit similar to the question I asked you a bit ago, which is you're jamming to worship music. Give me a group. Give me a worship group you love or a Christian artist.
I love Elevation Worship, Passion City Music, Hillsong United.
Okay, so you're rocking to Hillsong, all right? And then we go out to practice. Something tells me we're not doing Hillsong at practice. What? So how do you balance because I got teenagers and we have those conversations how do we balance the music kids? I know the music I like to listen to when I was a teenager. How do we balance? How do you balance? Not we. How do you balance that as a head football coach at SMU with what the kids want to listen to get hype and what you like to listen to get your heart right? How do you balance that? Seriously.
No, it's an awesome question, and I got to deal with it with my 12-year-old boys too.
Yeah.
So we listen to what they want to listen to at practice, but it's edited, it's clean. Where my kids are at practice, they can be there. There's been times where I've looked at the guys running the music and said, nope, that one's done, And I think it goes back to my job is to lead these guys and influence them and have an impact on them. And so in order to do that, I have to be consistent. They have to know who I am, and I think they do. I hope they see me model it. But at the same time, I got to meet them where they are and find a way, because I think sometimes you can lose your influence with people by how you maybe try to communicate what you think is important and what they need to. And so to me, it's about the relationship. I'm trying to create the relationships with my players. So when they are way out of line, I can pull them aside and let them know why, whether it's on the field or whether it's personal, and they'll listen to me because they trust that there's no judgment coming. They trust that I love them, and they trust that I am who I say I am, and I want what's best for them. And so that's how we do it. There's things I say no to they probably don't love, but that's what we do. And there's plenty that I let them be who they are, and that's just kind of part of it here.
Rhett, we're all pulled and stressed and run 100 miles an hour, but you have two sets of twin boys, Thomas and Hudson, and daughters. Is it Rowan and Scarlett? That's how I say it?
Wow,
Rowan and Scarlett.
Okay. And you're in charge of a massive organization. We've talked about your success. I want to talk about your wife a little bit right now. And how do you make sure she knows your job is not more important than her? I think a lot of guys struggle with it. I follow you on Instagram. I know who you are, and you're phenomenal at it. Coach us up on how you go about that, please.
Well, it's easy because she's incredible.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's not easy. I'm kidding. But she is incredible. That's something that one of those, you ask that question, I'm like, I don't feel qualified to answer it because I feel like I fail a lot at that. Because you're right, we're pulled in so many directions. I would say this, first of all, she and I talk about it all the time. I think the first thing is, it's not my job, it's our job, and I include her. She's a part of it. She's around our players. She's involved with our coaches' wives a lot. We had our senior banquet last night to honor our seniors, and she gave every outgoing senior a Bible with their name engraved on it and a note from her. I had nothing to do with it, and so she's a part of it with me. We do it together. It's not me and then her. Yes, there are times we divide and conquer, and I'm doing this, and she's got the kids. But, we do it together. Our kids are involved a lot. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd say, you got to be intentional. And it's the same thing with my kids, right? It's not about the amount of time. It's the quality of the time. So, when I am home, am I present? For example, something we do every Wednesday night in season is date night. And probably any coach is going to tell you that's insane. You can't do that. You got to be watching film or this or that. I'm like, not if I'm any good at my job. By 8:30 on Wednesday night, and we're a morning practice team. By 8:30 on Wednesday night, I've had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. If we're not ready to go, but that's on the calendar. That's just like meeting at 2:00 with the offensive staff to do third downs. And 8:30, after I do my radio show from 7 to 8 on Wednesday nights, we go a mile down the road from our house and we have dinner, and we're there an hour. And it's what we do, right? We get away a couple times in the off season. I equate it to this. I know I'm kind of shifting to parenting, but it's the same thing. I think how I love my kids and how I show her that I'm intentional with them honors her too. But, I think my marriage has to actually be more important than being a dad, which I can get out of whack sometimes.
Yeah.
It goes back to that inside-out approach. If my marriage is good, I'm probably doing a better job as a dad. And so, I love the analogy when you're on an airplane and they say, hey, if you're traveling with a small child and the oxygen mask popped down, everyone's first thought is I need to put it on the kid first. But it's actually the other way around. They tell you to put yours on first so then you can take care of the child. And that's what we have talked about. We try to do is hey, if we're good, everything else in our family will be good. If we're not good, it's not. And that's hard. And the last thing I'll tell you is I've told her this since I went to Auburn in 2009. When we went down and said, hey, we're going to be a GA for 2 years. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't, because she did not sign up for this coaching thing. And I was like, hey, if it doesn't work in 2 years, we'll get out. I'll do whatever. And every year since then, at the beginning of the year, we get to July. We go on our family vacations and whatever. And right before the seasons start, I'll just look at her and say, am I good? And that question is, if I'm ever letting my job or what I do hurt our family, my relationship with her and our kids, she has the 100% right to say, you're out, and I'm out right then. It's not my choice. It's hers. And every year so far, she says, you're doing exactly what you're called to do.
So if we ever see an abrupt resigning by you, we know that she answered that question.
It's her fault?
Yeah.
Well, it's my fault, and she's checking me.
Right,
yeah.
That's right.
Rhett, who taught you that? That's rare. That's uncommon. I love it.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I just remember when we went down there, we had that conversation. We decided to do that, and we've done it ever since. I will say, Butch Thompson did teach me something that's good along those lines, and he taught me when I was at Auburn in 2015. He had just gotten the head job, I think, somewhere around there.
Butch Thompson's baseball coach at Auburn, Jimmy.
Yes. And he said, win the first 5 minutes you're in the home. And as a younger coach at that time, it hit me in the face because it's easy to, like, I'm going to get home at 5:30 or 6 in the off season, but I'm going to walk in the door on the phone with the recruit or whatever, and I just and I go into here, and 20 minutes pass, and I'm home, but I'm not. And it's like, man, I would stay a mile from the house, finish whatever call I have, put the phone down, show up 20 minutes later, but when I walk in, I can hug and kiss my wife in front of the kids, and Daddy, and they all run up. I may have to go work for the next 3 hours, but those first 5 to 10 minutes win them. And now my family's good.
Yeah.
Like they got, but if they all, Daddy, no, I'm on the phone. Just give me a minute. And, man, that convicted me like crazy. So
no, that's a good word. I can't tell you how many times I've been gone, and I just cannot wait to get in the door, and I see them. And like 3 to 5 minutes later, they're running off doing whatever it is they're doing.
They're gone. They're good.
They're good. But you're right. It is crazy how, like, you think they're going to – and it's not always like that. But that is a good word. And I know that my wife called me on that early in my career when I was coming home with a few different things. After I got done playing, I would come home a lot, and she's like, I don't care if you stay in the car. Just when you come in, can you never be on the phone? Just don't come in on the phone. I was like, you know what? That's a good word.
It's simple, but it's easy to not do, right?
It is. And Butch and Gabe, and that's a heck of a staff down there at Auburn baseball.
Yes.
You said something that I want you to coach us up on. Put a little skin on it if you don't mind. You said you have to coach them as hard as you're willing to love them. And I'm a huge believer. I coach a lot of middle school sports. Kids love to be coached. They really do. They want to be coached. But you said you're going to coach them as hard as you're willing to love them. Coach us up on what it looks like practically daily. How do you make it a point to show your boys that you love them, your team?
Yeah, you got to have a relationship with them. I mean, nobody cares.
So what's that look like? You call them in the office? You put your
No, it's a process. Okay. It's spending time, right? And so, like, for instance, we'll do it again this spring. We did it last year when I got here. We were new. It's like all spring. I remember telling our staff, the X's and O's are going to get there. All that's great. Like, the number one thing we come out of spring is we have to have a connection and relationship with our players. That's it. And so whether it's just eating breakfast with them in the mornings instead of just grabbing it and going back to your office, whether it's team functions we do, like we took them paintballing and swimming, and it's not about what we're doing, it's about we're doing it together, and just being around them enough, right? Because think about the people you're closest to in your life. The best relationships, your best friends, your family, you do what? You spend the most time with them. So we got to spend time together, and not football time, like just time, getting to know them, asking them questions about them, their family, and listening, and to where they know, like, man, Coach really does actually care about me, because they're skeptical, especially in this world now. And I think of my best coaches, I didn't necessarily always like them on the field. I mean, I've said it enough. He won't get, like, Gus Malzahn told me he was going to kill me, literally, like several times, and I think he meant it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the scary part.
Yeah.
But I knew where that was coming from because there was a relationship, right? And those are the ones you respect the most. And I think that's what I was trying to probably convey by that, is that's just, it's all about the relationship, and everything stems from that.
Rhett, we're gonna end with that, because I'm gonna be respectful of your time, because we caught you at one of the most busy times of your life. But I just want to say again how fortunate SMU is to have you. I've known it since you're in the 7th grade that God's hand of favor has been upon you, but you've also honored God with your life. I know Rhett pretty well. Gus and I are really good friends. I've heard a lot about Rhett through others, but through my own eyes. I think we captured your heart today. If you're a parent of an SMU football player right now, I think you say, God, thank you for that leadership in our program. I pray that God continues to lift you up, because you lift him up. And you've done a great job of coaching us up today on a lot of key things, Rhett, a lot of key things. You don't have to be old to have a lot of wisdom, and you're wise beyond your years, but you're also your humility really jumped out at all of us today. So I just want to say thank you for your friendship. I'm always here. If anything I can ever do for you. Rhett's not opposed to text me after a game saying you should have said this instead of that in a broadcast. He's done that before. Like he knows ball. He knows ball. So
quit saying 5 and white.
Yeah, 5 and white. Yeah.
I'll say this, Chris. I know I don't really know you, but Gabe Gross is one of my really, really good friends, and I know he thinks the world of you. And feel like I know you through him a little bit. And then, Jimmy, we didn't get into it much about, impacts of coaches and fathers and how all that works on your life. That's been huge for me. It's why I coach. But you're one of the few men when I was in the 7th grade through high school that really had a huge impact on my life, and just how you were at that time, a young leader. And I just want to thank you for your example too, and just really what you mean to me.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Hey, go get him.
Yeah.
Beat BYU in that bowl game.
What do we say at SMU? Is it
Pony up?
Pony up.
Pony
That's
up.
what I thought. I didn't want to be wrong
Yeah.
there. So, all right, you got
Yep.
you got some fans now in Louisville, Coach.
All right. Appreciate it.
Pony up, coach. See ya.
Pony up.